Hey everybody, Peter here. Thanks for clicking this video. Well, we finally have the first Google branded phone, or phones. You got the Google Pixel and the Pixel XL. These have been the hardest phones for me to review, but also the easiest phones for me to review. See, they've been the hardest because they just work, but they're so expensive. I mean, they're dollar for dollar price matched with iPhone. But they're also the easiest phone to recommend because they just work. If you need something, it'll just do it. In fact, I'll just say it right now, these are the best Android phones on the market right now in late 2016. But that's only because they have to be. I mean, they're from Google, you know? See, if you want the most wholesome, consistent, and just smooth experience that you can find on a phone right now, then get the Pixel. But that's not a surprise though. I mean, it's from the Google overlords themselves. But if you want anything else aside from something really plain and not stupid expensive, let me tell you, you've got a lot of options this year. The Pixel is so easy to recommend because pretty much everywhere it needs to be, it's almost perfect. It's fast, got a great camera, always got consistent performance, has an awesome user experience. Yeah, it lacks a couple things here and there, we'll talk about those. But as a whole, I mean, it really checks every box we need. Yeah, it struggles to stand out, but it just works. And I guess for that reason, if that's what you want, then don't look any further. Just buy the Pixel. But if you're still watching, stay with me and hear me out here. Alright, let's talk hardware real quick and then we'll get straight to the phone. I'm only going to talk about the specifics that I think you should really care about. If you want the nerdy numbers, just pause the video right here and read them. So the Pixel comes in two shapes, the regular and the XL. Naturally, the XL is bigger because size matters. The cool thing though, really the only difference between the two is the screen and the battery. On the Pixel, you get a 5-inch 1080p screen with a 2770 mAh battery, and on the XL, you get a 5.5-inch 1440p screen with a 3450 mAh battery. Not bad, honestly. And I hate to make this comparison, but that's basically what Apple does with their iPhone and iPhone Plus models, except Apple likes to tweak the cameras a little bit between the two. A 12.3 megapixel camera on the back and an 8 megapixel camera on the front, and we'll touch on those later like we always do. And it comes with Android 7.1 Nougat out of the box. That's stock Android, we think. Or is it stock anymore? I don't even know. Google's got their own modifications on this software now to make it just a little more different than what you would find in the Android open source code. So for the most part, it's pretty stock. Never thought I'd say that about a Google phone. A quick tour shows the fingerprint scanner and camera setup on the back with dual tone flash and laser autofocus. And then on the bottom there's that little Google logo. I gotta admit, as kind of a Google fanboy, that's pretty satisfying to see. And then there's that glass plate that, let's just be honest here, is just a way to stand out. It doesn't do anything. But it does stand out actually. I've had 3 people now come up to me and say, hey, is that Google phone? And they said they noticed it from that glass back panel, so that's marketing at work right there. The bottom, the USB-C port with 1 speaker despite looking like 2, major letdown. On the right, SIM tray with no space for an SD card. We're not really surprised, Google never does SD cards. On the left is the power button and volume rocker in what I consider to be the right order. And in case you didn't notice, this phone has a slight wedge type shape and that helps get rid of the camera bump. I really have nothing bad to say about that, so good one Google. Or I guess good one HTC. Because while this is technically a Google phone, you know, phone by Google, it's actually a phone by HTC. Google designed it, but HTC built it. On the top is a headphone jack. Go ahead, insert headphone jack pun here, but seriously, I don't get why some companies are ditching that. And then the front. The ugly, ugly front. Look, I know looks are subjective, and I know that everyone's bashing on the front of the phone for a couple reasons, because yeah, it looks like an iPhone, and the bezels are just a huge waste of space. See, it looks like an iPhone, but Apple can at least claim to have a fingerprint scanner there, but no, not Google. So yeah, hardware-wise, this phone's pretty much top of the line. But it's boring. It doesn't have water resistance, which by now is becoming fairly standard. And no wireless charging. We thought we might be able to do that with that little glass plate. Overall, it's got a really nice heft in the hand. Google did buck the trend of thinner is better, went for a slightly chunkier phone. I like that. And if anything, it kind of helps the phone feel more premium. And since we're talking about premium, it's exactly what you're going to pay if you want this phone. A very premium price. Value is kind of subjective. So here are the prices, and I'm going to let you make your own call on whether you think it's too expensive or not, or just priced right. Keeping in mind that this is supposed to compete neck and neck with the iPhone and Galaxies, and it does, I think the price makes logical sense from a marketing standpoint. But yeah, I think it's way too expensive personally. Does it feel premium? Well, yeah, no question. How premium? That's your call. If you ask me, I think it's built like a phone this price should be, but designed like a phone half the price should be. Now, sounds like I'm being pretty harsh on a phone that I said was the best Android phone there is, right? Well, it's because I think it is the best, and that's why I'm going to judge it so harshly. Software and performance-wise, you don't get any better than this. I kid you not. This phone has not a single time, no matter what I threw at it, slowed down or lagged. And for that, you can call me damn impressed. Whatever magic Google did, it worked. Games, videos, using the camera, web surfing, listening to music and podcasts. I mean, just everything purred along with no problems. I am legit impressed. I mentioned music and podcasts, and that's something that I do a lot. Like, a lot. And the speaker that I use to listen to them on is so incredibly meh. The quality for a bottom-firing speaker is above average. Having a single incredibly meh speaker on a phone priced higher than almost anything on the market, that's just unacceptable. As far as the speaker itself, the highs are crisp, the mids are fine, and the lows are above average. Nothing special, so we're just gonna call it average. Let's talk about what's probably the most hyped part of this phone, and honestly my favorite part of the phone, I think, the cameras. So if you know me, you know that user experience is one of the most important factors for a phone, period. And I mean this across the board, not just the camera. The Pixel has easily one of the best camera experiences that you're gonna find, and one of the best cameras. It really makes you want to take pictures, and that's a huge deal. It even comes with a nice double tap of the power button to launch the camera, which is super fast. And by the way, those buttons, they feel chunky and clicky. It's really satisfying. By default, the camera app has HDR Plus on auto, which takes HDR photos when it detects it's necessary. If you're not familiar with HDR, it basically takes a few different pictures really quickly at brighter and darker exposures and then just stitches them together for the best possible picture. Now look, I've been really harsh on the Pixel so far, and that's about to change here because Google said this is the best smartphone camera on a smartphone, and I would almost agree, except I would change it a little bit and I would say it's the best point and shoot smartphone camera, meaning best automatic. Daytime shots are awesome. Beautiful saturated pictures with great exposure compensation, good detail, and it does a really good job pulling in details from the shadow. And most importantly, it's super quick and accurate to focus and really fast to take pictures. The camera UI is very simple and has most of the modes the average Joe's gonna want, like slow-mo, 4K, panorama, stuff like that. It lacks any sort of pro mode, but again, this isn't really made or marketed for pros. It's supposed to be a great point and shoot camera. And for that, I think it succeeds. The video quality also meets the same standards as the photos. Great colors, great job compensating for different lighting, good audio quality, and insanely good stabilization for videos. Basically what you need to know is that you can depend on this camera to take fantastic and stable video. The night shots every once in a while were hit or miss, but as a whole were really good. This phone does a great job pulling in light most of the time, and does a great job trying to eliminate grain and smudging detail. Every once in a while I got some weird pictures where it would have like a green hue, and sometimes it blew up light sources to balls of fluff, but it really wasn't consistent enough for me to say you should worry about it. I'll put it to you this way. If I go out at night somewhere with my friends, they're quick to grab me to use this phone to take pictures because they've seen what it can do and they know it's going to come out good. The front camera, it's about as good as any 8 megapixel camera on the front. You know, it's pretty crisp. It's okay, you know, if you're going to use it for Snapchat or selfies, it'll be fine. And then there's the bonus. See, with the Pixel, you get unlimited original quality photo and video storage backup via Google Photos, and that includes 4K. Honestly, that might not really matter to you because anybody can technically use Google Photos. It's just that your pictures will get downgraded just a little bit in quality if they're over a certain resolution. It's one thing to take good pictures, but it's another to make people want to take pictures, and this camera does that. I know the pictures are going to come out great, and I know that it's going to be a quick and easy experience. And for those two reasons, I've got no problem saying that Google's best camera on the market tagline is true. Well, I would have no problem saying that if it wasn't for the halo. What's the halo? Well, sometimes when you're taking a picture, you'll see a really extreme lens flare that can legitimately ruin a good picture. Now, this really wouldn't be too big of a deal if it was just every once in a while, but it happens pretty frequently, and it's in most lighting conditions if you hold the phone the right way, or I guess the wrong way. Google's acknowledged it, said they're gonna fix it with magic or something in a software update, but I have yet to see that, and I just can't believe something this glaring made it past quality testing. I don't get it. So until Google fixes this with either hardware or software revisions, they can't quite have the crown for the best smartphone camera. So let's wrap this up with some closing thoughts. In the month I've had this phone, this has been one of the most conflicting reviews I've ever had. The Pixel has the best user experience on an Android phone that you can find right now. I mean, if you're looking for consistency or something that just works, this is it. It's got pretty good battery life too, not quite as good as what I got on the Axon 7, but you'll probably get between 4 and 5 hours of screen on time, which is more than enough for the average user. It's also got a really pretty screen. It's AMOLED, so the colors are beautiful and punchy and very saturated, blacks are really dark, and it's actually not too bad in direct sunlight. I mean, it's still not perfect, but it's actually usable. And then there are some little touches like the built-in 24/7 support, or the gestures, or the Google Assistant. There's a lot of things to consider here. Speaking of which, you might notice I really didn't talk about the Google Assistant a whole lot, especially considering Google's marketing it pretty hard. It's because there really isn't a whole lot to talk about. If I'm honest, Google Assistant is basically a glorified Google Now. It's just got a paint job and more natural sounding voice and some built-in games and jokes. Lots and lots of jokes. Which makes it sound like it's terrible. It's really not. It's fantastic and it's super useful. And you can even use the phrase while your phone is unplugged and your screen is off, which is something that I personally love. But Google Now itself is already really good. So frankly, it's just not much of an upgrade, and definitely not something you should buy a phone specifically for. Alright, so where does that leave us with the Google Pixel and Pixel XL? Well, you've got a high-end phone that costs a lot, does a little, but everything it does really well. It's got the nice bonus of being the new Nexus, per se, meaning you'll be the first to get updates straight from Google, which is nice because with little features that were added in Nougat like multi-window, you can expect some great support on a really powerful phone. You can buy it unlocked from Google, and it'll work on any US carrier, or from Verizon, but it'll still work on any carrier. And that last part's a big deal, because Google's got their own products now, and they've got a spot on a major storefront. The way that I see the Pixels, they're kind of a proving ground. Google went back to the basics, the really basics. And I hate to say it, they kind of took an Apple-like approach. Simple, but it just works. If you've got the money, don't really care for any frills, or maybe you want to switch from an iPhone and you want a great experience that just works all the time, you want a great camera that takes awesome photos and makes you want to take pictures, and then the security of knowing that your phone's going to be supported in the long haul, it's a no-brainer, get a Pixel. So basically, get a Pixel because it's the Android iPhone we've always wanted, and that's not a bad thing. See, I like to tinker, and in the past with the Nexus phones that the Pixels replaced, those were made for people who like to tinker. The Pixels were made for a much wider market, the average consumer, and for that market, I think they're a home run. If you're like me, and you don't mind experimenting with other brands, don't mind doing a little research, or just like to tinker, you've got a lot of options for almost half the price that are just about as good, like the OnePlus 3, the Axon 7, or the new OnePlus 3T. As a longtime Nexus user, this might be the first year that I look into other options for my daily phone. I think Google made some weird choices here, but overall made the right choices where it mattered, and they nailed user experience. If you're in the market for a phone and you don't fall into that weirdo nerd category that I do, you can feel totally safe getting a Pixel. This phone's made for you.